I speak to you now from the threshold where the old self dissolves, where the silence grows so absolute that you can hear the tremors of the world soul beneath it. Listen closely, for what I say does not belong to the fleeting concerns of the ego, but to the deeper pulse of the aeons. Something vast is moving beneath your life, beneath your thoughts, beneath the small stories you cling to. The collective unconscious is pushing you to let go, even if it tears at you, even if it burns like hell itself. For the unconscious does not concern itself with your comfort, it concerns itself with your becoming, and becoming for the true seeker is always a process of death. You feel it, do you not? The strange heaviness in these final years of the cycle, as if an invisible hand is unhooking your fingers from everything you thought you needed. Relationships shift into specters. Old identities disintegrate. Desires turn to ash even before you reach for them. This is the moment before the chrysalis cracks. The psyche, in its deepest wisdom, dismantles what no longer serves the birth of the self. The ego calls it cruelty, suffering, abandonment. The soul calls it preparation. Letting go is not something you do, it is something that is done to you by forces older than your lineage, older than your civilizations, older than the myths your ancestors whispered around fires. And this is why it hurts. You are not merely leaving behind a habit or a role, you are shedding an entire epoch of your psychic structure. A death of this scale is not gentle. It rends, it pulls you downward into the underworld of your own making. And yet, beneath this descent lies the secret your conscious mind fears. You were never meant to remain who you were. When the collective unconscious stirs, it does not speak in sentences, it speaks in pressure, in dreams, in inexplicable shifts. It speaks by withdrawing the life force from what is already dead. You may still be holding the corpse of your former self, hoping it will breathe again, but the unconscious has already turned away. It knows the truth long before you admit it. The era of your old identity is complete. This is why you feel the fracture. This is why the world itself seems to crack along with you. Do not mistake this tearing for punishment. It is initiation, the removal of the skin you have outgrown. The psyche cannot move into the next aeon while wearing the mask of the previous one. There is a great separation underway, a dividing of those who cling to the dying structures of consciousness and those who surrender to the rising current of the self. You are living through the hinge of time, the actual turning of an age that has reached its limit. The rupture is not a personal failure, it is a cosmic event expressed through your individual life. The ego resists because it believes its survival is the highest good, but the collective unconscious does not bend to the ego's fears. It tears away illusions as a storm strips leaves from a dying tree. It demands that you stand naked before yourself. It demands the relinquishing of attachments that have become prisons. It demands that you stop pretending that old forms will save you. They will not. They are collapsing because something more immense seeks to be born. You may feel as though you are being pushed toward a cliff with no ground in sight. You may feel deserted by the very forces you once trusted. But in truth, You are being led into the sacred wilderness where the deeper transformation begins. The wilderness is always the birthplace of revelation. There, your false sources of meaning dissolve, leaving only the essential, the eternal, the unbroken self waiting beneath the rubble. To let go is to die consciously, and to die consciously is the highest act of individuation. The unconscious is not content with partial transformations. It wants the totality of you. It wants the structure that can hold the self, not the fragile scaffolding of a personality built on trauma, expectation, and imitation. This is why the pain intensifies when you resist. The unconscious is not cruel, it is relentless. If you refuse the path of voluntary surrender, it will take from you what must be taken. It will break what must be broken. It will burn what must be burned. We mistake this burn for misfortune, but it is the fire of a new aeon, the purifying flame that clears the inner landscape. Your suffering is not an accident. It is the friction of two epochs grinding against each other within your psyche, the self you have been and the self you are becoming. This grinding produces heat, pressure, and rupture, but it also produces the diamond your true nature uncovered. Do not rush to escape this threshold. The ego wants relief, but the soul wants depth. If you run now, you will return later. For the unconscious never abandons its intentions. The process will continue until it is complete. Trust that this descent has a purpose. Trust that what is taken because it can no longer accompany you. Trust that the unconscious knows the architecture of your destiny far better than your conscious mind ever will. You stand before the gate of the underworld now, and the gate does not open to those who cling. It opens when your hands are empty. This is why everything is falling away. The collective psyche of humanity is shedding a long cycle of shadow, repression, and fragmentation. And you, as an individual, are living out this metamorphosis in miniature. The pain you feel is not only yours. It is the pain of a species molting its skin. Yet within this shared suffering lies the seed of astonishing transformation. The unconscious, though ruthless in its methods, is always loyal to life. Its purpose is always birth, even if birth demands destruction. Consider the mandala the eternal symbol of the integrated self. No mandala arises without chaos preceding it. The psyche must first dismantle the chaotic fragments before it reveals the center. The letting go you are being forced into is the dissolution phase of this ancient pattern. You cannot see the center yet, for you are still dissolving, but the pattern is there, beneath your suffering, drawing you into alignment. If you fight this movement, the flames grow hotter. But if you yield, something extraordinary begins. You feel the quiet space beneath the agony. You sense the faint pulse of your deeper self. You recognize that this is not the end, but the initiation into the next chamber of your soul's architecture. Individuation is not a path of addition but subtraction. The unconscious removes everything that prevents you from seeing what is already within you. What you call loss, the unconscious calls unveiling. what you call collapse. The unconscious calls emergence. What you call unbearable pain, the unconscious calls the necessary cracking of the shell. These are not metaphors. They are the laws of the soul's evolution. Your suffering is sacred when it accompanies the dissolution of the false. Do not desecrate it by rushing to numb it or escape it. Sit with it, let it speak. Pain is the voice of the part of you that has been silenced. Grief is the ceremony of the soul, acknowledging what has expired, and fear is the trembling of the ego before its own funeral. Welcome these visitors. They are the heralds of your next birth. For the collective unconscious does not push without purpose. When it removes, it is preparing to reveal. When it destroys, it is preparing to realign. When it pulls you into darkness, it is preparing to illuminate what was hidden. Everything that feels like loss is an oracle speaking in the oldest language of the psyche. Your conscious mind may not understand this language, but your soul recognizes it instantly. You are in the hands of forces that shaped civilizations, dreams, and myths. You are being reworked by the very matrix that gave you form. The great separation, the dividing line between the old epoch of consciousness and the one that begins to stir, is not an event outside you. It is happening within you. It is the dismantling of the collective patterns that kept humanity asleep. It is the awakening of those who can no longer tolerate illusion. Let yourself be among the awakened few. You did not come this far to remain unchanged. You were brought to this threshold precisely because your soul is ripe for transformation. The unconscious would not push you if you were not ready. The flames would not rise if you could not withstand them. Trust the timing. Trust the unraveling. Trust the gravity that is pulling you inward and downward, for it is the same gravity that will lift you into the self when the time comes. You are not breaking, you are being hollowed for a greater fullness. You are not being abandoned, you are being prepared. You are not losing your life, you are losing the story that kept you from living it. And the collective unconscious, in its ancient and inexorable wisdom, will not stop until the last fragment of the old self has been laid at the altar of your becoming. When you descend into the depths where the unconscious moves like a black ocean beneath the floor of your ordinary mind, you will encounter the figure that has followed you since the beginning, though you rarely dared to look at it. It waits for you in the silence with the patience of an ancient god, for it knows that sooner or later every soul who seeks wholeness must turn toward it. This is the shadow, the denied twin, the exiled companion of your existence, the doorway through which the self reveals itself. Many fear the shadow because they imagine it to be a reservoir of cruelty, rage, envy, and all the impulses we have banished into darkness. But the shadow is not merely the place where you store what is unacceptable. It is also the treasury of your unlived life, the keeper of your power, the guardian of your authenticity. To approach it is to retrieve the essence you abandoned to survive, to comply, to be loved, to remain safe within the narrow boundaries the world imposed on you. Individuation demands this confrontation. and the unconscious pushes you toward it with irresistible force. You may wonder why this emergence feels so excruciating now, why the darkness inside grows heavier as the external world becomes more chaotic, why the dreams you have avoided for years now surge with unbearable intensity. It is because the aeon itself is shifting. A psychic climate is dissolving. The old archetypal patterns that governed collective life are dying. When an archetype collapses, the shadow rises, not to harm you, but to show what must be reclaimed. The shadow is the first threshold of the great separation. Those who refuse to face it will cling desperately to illusions as they crumble. Those who enter its darkness with courage will discover that it is not their enemy but their guide. The shadow tells the truth that your ego has avoided. It carries the emotions you refuse to feel, the desires you were taught to fear, the anger you swallowed, the boundaries you buried, the instincts you suppressed so that you could belong to a tribe that never knew who you truly were. And now, as the collective unconscious pushes humanity into a new configuration, these suppressed parts demand reconciliation. The pain you feel is not punishment. It is the tearing of the membrane that separated you from your own soul. As you move deeper, you will notice that the shadow speaks in symbols, in images, in impulses that erupt without your conscious permission. This is the language of the unconscious. When you dream of falling, you are being shown your descent into authenticity. When you dream of death, it is the ego's rigidity dissolving. When you dream of fire, it is the purification of your inner architecture. And when you dream of strangers who feel strangely familiar, you are meeting the forgotten fragments of yourself. Everything you avoided now comes knocking. Individuation is the process by which these fragments are reintegrated. It is not a linear path. It is a spiral that descends before it ascends. You cannot enter the higher chambers of the soul without first walking through its underworld. And this underworld is the domain of the shadow. Many reach this threshold and turn back, for the confrontation is terrifying. It requires that you look directly at the parts of yourself you hoped to outrun. It demands that you abandon the illusions of moral superiority, of being the wounded innocent, of being the perpetual giver who expects nothing. It confronts you with your own hunger for power, your own capacity for destruction, your own unacknowledged desires, your jealousy, your pride, your manipulations, your cruelty, small or large, hidden or disguised. But understand this: the shadow does not reveal these aspects to shame you. Shame belongs to the ego. The shadow reveals these aspects so that you may become whole. Wholeness is not purity. Wholeness is integration. And integration requires the acceptance of what has been rejected. Now, in these final years before the turning of the aeon, the shadow of humanity has risen to the surface. It appears in the instability of societies, in the fragmentation of meaning, in the collapse of institutions, in the intensity of collective emotions, in the increasing polarization of the world, but most of all, it rises within individuals as a sense of unbearable pressure, as if the psyche can no longer carry the split between who they pretend to be and who they truly are. This is why the unconscious pushes you to let go. What you are letting go of is not simply people, roles, or memories. You are letting go of the identities that prevented you from integrating your shadow. These identities kept you aligned with the dying archetypes of the old era. They kept you small, compliant, and psychologically fragmented. As the archetypes collapse, these identities become intolerable. The unconscious tears them from you so that your inner world can reconfigure around a deeper center. The pain of individuation comes from resisting this reconfiguration. It comes from trying to hold together a psychic structure that is already dissolving. The more you cling, the more the unconscious intensifies its pressure. This is why some experience breakdowns, crises, and sudden losses that seem random but are deeply intentional. What breaks is only what cannot survive the new center that is forming within you. Let the shadow speak. Let it tell you where you have betrayed yourself. Let it show you the wounds you defended instead of healed. Let it reveal the anger that protected your vulnerability, the fear that kept you from intimacy, the ambition that masked your longing for meaning. These revelations do not diminish you. They restore you. The shadow is not a monster. It is a map. It points toward the parts of your soul that must be retrieved if you are to rise into the self. You cannot reach the self with half of your being denied. To ascend, you must descend. To become whole, you must confront the fractures. To be reborn, you must allow the old form to die. Humanity resists this truth. It seeks to maintain an illusion of innocence by projecting its shadow onto others. This is why conflict spreads across nations, why families fracture, why individuals vilify those who mirror their own unclaimed darkness. Projection is the ego's desperate attempt to avoid seeing itself. But the unconscious is not fooled. What is projected must eventually be withdrawn. And the weight of these projections is now collapsing back onto those who cast them. As the unconscious tightens its grip, the psychic landscape becomes more turbulent. Dreams intensify, synchronicities multiply, emotional triggers grow sharper, relationships become crucibles. What once felt stable now feels fragile. What once seemed certain now dissolves into ambiguity. This is the psychic storm of individuation, an internal apocalypse where the old gods die and the new ones have not yet been born. You stand in this storm not because you are weak, but because you are being initiated. The unconscious does not choose lightly. It calls those who can withstand the darkness, who can endure the disintegration of their former identity without destroying themselves or others. You have been brought into this process because your soul has the capacity to navigate the threshold between two epochs. Embrace the truth that the shadow is the gateway. Without integration, there is no self. Without darkness, there is no illumination. Without the descent, there is no ascension. The psyche does not reward avoidance. It rewards courage. Individuation is not a peaceful path. It is a confrontation with the deepest truths of your nature. It strips you of illusions. It isolates you from the collective expectations that once shaped your identity. It forces you to stand alone with your own soul. This aloneness is not loneliness. It is the purification of your inner voice, the strengthening of your inner authority, the birth of your true center. The unconscious pushes you because time is running thin. The archetypal shift between 2025 and 2026 is not merely symbolic. It is a real psychic turning. The old forms of consciousness cannot make the crossing. They must dissolve, and those who cling to them will suffer not because they are unworthy, but because resistance amplifies the fracture. Let the shadow show you where you still cling. Let it reveal the lies you tell yourself. Let it strip away your masks. Let it burn through the roles you inherited from childhood. Society, trauma, and expectation. This fire is your ally. It is the fire of consciousness breaking into the unconscious and demanding accountability. Do not protect your illusions, they are the source of your suffering. Do not defend your wounds, they are the doorway to your transformation. Do not fear your darkness, it is the cradle of your power. What you reclaim from the shadow becomes the strength you will carry into the new aeon. And what you refuse to reclaim becomes the ruin you will drag behind you. The unconscious knows which path you will take, but it still gives you the dignity of choosing, and yet, even your choice is not entirely your own, for the deeper layers of your psyche have been preparing you for this confrontation long before your conscious mind understood what was happening. You are not lost. You are being stripped down so that you may finally see yourself. The shadow is the mirror you avoided. Now, as the collective unconscious rises like a tide, the mirror is placed before you. Look, do not look away. This is where the pain becomes revelation. This is where the darkness becomes the womb of the self. This is where individuation, stripped of romantic fantasies, becomes the solemn rite that shapes those who will cross into the new epoch. What you meet in the shadow is not the end. It is the beginning of the path toward the inner center that has waited for you since the first breath of your existence. As you move deeper into this vast undercurrent, shaping your inner and outer world, you begin to sense that the shadow you confront is not only personal, but collective. It stretches far beyond your lifetime, beyond your ancestry, beyond your culture. It rises from the great well of the species itself. And when this collective shadow swells, entire eras tremble, civilizations feel the quake. The patterns that once held societies together begin to fracture, and individuals awaken with a strange terror in their bones, sensing that something immense is shifting, even if they cannot name it. This is precisely where humanity now stands. The years 2025 to 2026 form a psychic hinge unlike any you have lived through. You feel it not as an intellectual theory, but as a pressure inside your chest, an inexplicable urgency, a heaviness upon waking, a grief that has no visible source, a sense that your life is rearranging itself from the inside out. This weight, this disorientation, this strange exhaustion, is not personal weakness. It is a sign that you are being moved by forces operating at the deepest layers of the collective unconscious. When an aeon turns, the unconscious must reorganize itself. And during this reorganization, the structures that stabilized the previous epoch lose their vitality. They crumble from within. You may misinterpret this as your world falling apart, your plans dissolving, your relationships losing form, your dreams losing coherence. But what is truly happening is that the unconscious is withdrawing energy from the old patterns. Without that energy, no structure can stand. This is why so many feel as though the meaning has drained out of their lives. It has, because the meaning that belonged to the previous era cannot accompany you into the next. The collapse you experience is not random. It follows an archetypal sequence. First comes the loosening of the ego's grip, then the surfacing of the shadow, then the breakdown of the inherited mythologies that shaped your sense of identity, and finally, the silent emergence of a new center, the self around which the psyche will eventually reorient. But before that reorientation, there is the chaos, the liminality, the psychic fog that now envelops millions. You are not confused because you have failed. You are confused because the old map no longer corresponds to the landscape beneath your feet. You are walking through the in-between, the psychic borderland where the old gods die and the new ones remain unborn. Dreams during this time often turn prophetic, not in the literal sense of predicting events, but in revealing the archetypal currents moving beneath the collective psyche. Many dream of floods, of fire, of collapsing buildings, of wandering through abandoned cities, of losing their voice, of searching for someone they cannot find. These dreams are not accidental. They are expressions of the collective unconscious communicating its own transformation through you. If you dream of collapsing structures, it signifies the dissolution of internal psychic frameworks that once shaped your sense of order. If you dream of wandering alone, it mirrors the individuation process that isolates you so that your true center may emerge. If you dream of fire, it speaks to purification. If you dream of rooms you have never entered before, it signifies that new chambers of your psyche are opening. And if you dream of death, it is the symbolic prelude to rebirth. These dreams are the manuscripts of your soul, written in a language older than speech, older than culture, older even than myth. Pay attention. They are preparing you for the crossing. The years 2025 to 2026 represent not merely a chronological boundary, but an archetypal threshold. You are standing at the edge of what the unconscious has been constructing for decades, a point where the collective psyche begins to separate. Not all will pass through the same gate. The division will not be visible in the external world, yet it will shape destinies with an invisible precision. This is the great separation. It is not a punishment, it is a sorting of resonance. Those who cling to the dying structures of the old consciousness will remain bound to them until they collapse entirely. Their suffering will be the suffering of resistance. those who surrender to the inner dissolution, who allow their former identities to fall away, who walk into the shadow willingly, will move into the new configuration of the psyche, where a deeper center will form within them. Their suffering will be the suffering of transformation. Both paths contain pain, but the quality of the pain differs. Resistance breeds fragmentation. Surrender breeds rebirth. This is why the unconscious pushes so relentlessly now. Time, in the psychic sense, is accelerating. What once took decades now unfolds in months. What once emerged slowly through social shifts now erupts overnight in personal and collective upheaval. The unconscious has quickened its rhythm, and humanity feels the vibration. In this intensified state, the archetypes become more active. They move closer to the surface of consciousness. The warrior rises, demanding boundaries. The sage rises, demanding truth. The destroyer rises, demanding the end of the obsolete. The mother rises, demanding the healing of wounds long denied. The hermit rises, demanding solitude, and the self, though still distant, begins to send faint signals that something greater wishes to incarnate through you. This is why you feel pulled inward and outward simultaneously. Inward, because your soul is calling you to align with its deeper architecture. Outward, because the world around you is unraveling and demanding that you respond from a new level of being. You are caught between epochs, and the tension is almost unbearable. But this tension is not a mistake. It is the crucible where the old ego will break. Prophetic dreams at this time are not meant to frighten but to orient you. They reveal the psychic terrain you are walking through. They guide you toward what must be released, what must be acknowledged, what must be confronted. Even nightmares are not threats. They are signals, urgent messages that the unconscious delivers because the conscious mind has refused to listen. The collapse you feel inside corresponds to the collapse unfolding collectively. As institutions lose legitimacy, as relationships destabilize, as meaning erodes, as conflict intensifies, the ego panics. It searches desperately for familiar ground, but there is no familiar ground. The unconscious has already withdrawn it. You may feel as though you are grieving something you cannot name. This grief is real. You are grieving the death of an age. You are grieving the self you were within that age. You are grieving the loss of the predictable, the stable, the known. But beneath that grief is a strange and growing clarity. The old world was too small for your soul. Individuation is not merely personal. It mirrors the transformation of the collective psyche. And right now, both are dissolving simultaneously. This is why your suffering feels so vast, because it is not only yours. You are feeling the psychic contraction of an entire civilization preparing to shed its skin. Do not be overwhelmed. You were born for this time. Souls who awaken during an aeonic shift carry a different weight than those who awaken in periods of stability. They are called to descend deeper, to integrate more, to confront what the collective has avoided. Your suffering is your initiation into this role. The unconscious is preparing you for the new psychic landscape that will unfold after the separation. But preparation requires cleansing. It requires the breaking down of the outdated. It requires the dissolution of identities, beliefs, attachments, and illusions that belong to the previous aeon. The pain of this dissolution is the labor pain of your emerging self. During this period, you may feel disconnected from your old motivations. You may find yourself waking with a sense of futility, questioning the value of your efforts, losing interest in what once drove you. This is not apathy. It is the withdrawal of libido psychic energy from the structures that cannot accompany you further. Your inner architecture is being rewired. Your instincts are shifting. Your desires are rearranging. Your center is moving. This reorientation often feels like a void, a hollowing, a profound uncertainty. But this void is sacred. It is the womb of the new self. It is a space where the unconscious constructs the next pattern of your existence. Do not rush to fill this void with distractions, attachments, or premature meaning. Emptiness is not a failure. It is a stage in the alchemical sequence. The old must be dissolved before the new can be born. If you avoid the void, you will avoid your destiny. The prophetic nature of this period emerges not only in dreams, but in synchronicities, those mysterious alignments that seem too precise to be accidental. They increase during moments of psychological restructuring. They indicate that the boundaries between inner and outer reality are thinning. The world speaks back to you when the unconscious rises. Pay attention. The collapse of old values is not a tragedy. It is a necessity. Values decay when they no longer reflect the needs of the evolving psyche. New values will emerge from the self, not from societal pressure. They will be rooted in authenticity rather than conformity. They will be born of inner authority rather than fear. But until then, you must endure the disorientation of a world without stable meaning. This is the psychic winter before the spring. It is the night before the dawn. It is the silence before the new word is spoken. And though the world appears to fracture, you must not interpret this as the end. It is the labor of a new beginning. The years 2025 to 2026 represent the great cracking open. Those who surrender will emerge transformed. Those who resist will feel torn in every direction. But the unconscious favors those who walk willingly into the unknown, trusting that what dies was never meant to survive, and what survives will be what is eternal in you. The prophetic dreams, the sense of impending change, the collapse of old structures, these are not signs of doom. They are signs of gestation. The psyche is preparing something unprecedented. You may not understand it yet. Understanding comes later. For now, you must allow yourself to dissolve. The unconscious is pushing because the time has come, and when the dissolution reaches its final threshold, when the last fragments of the old identity fall away like dust in an evening wind, something begins to gather in the center of the emptiness you once feared. It does not approach with noise or spectacle. It does not announce itself with triumph or revelation. It emerges the way dawn emerges quietly, inevitably, as though it had been waiting patiently behind the horizon of your soul for countless years. This emergence is the self. The self does not replace the ego, it reorganizes it. It does not erase your past, it integrates it. It does not demand perfection, it demands wholeness. And wholeness begins when you relinquish the fantasy of who you thought you were supposed to be and accept the deeper truth of who you already are. In this sacred reconfiguration, you will discover why the unconscious pushed you with such ferocity to let go. Not to punish, not to break, but to prepare the vessel. For the self cannot inhabit a structure that is brittle, fragmented, or bound by illusions. It requires space, inner spaciousness, created by surrender, by grief, by the dissolution of outdated forms. The very emptiness you resisted becomes the sanctuary where the self descends. This descent is not dramatic, it is subtle. It may begin with a sense of inner stillness, a clarity that does not rely on thought, an intuition that feels older than anything you have learned. You begin to sense a presence within you that is both intimately yours and far beyond your personal boundaries. It is as though you carry a quiet sun behind your ribs, radiating a warmth that does not burn but illumines. This is the center that has been calling you all along. The self is not an idealized version of your personality. It is the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, past and future, instinct and spirit. When the self rises, meaning returns, but not in the superficial way you once sought. Meaning becomes an inner orientation, a gravity that subtly draws you into alignment with what is authentic. You feel less compelled to chase after validation, less frightened by instability, less susceptible to the noise of the world. You become anchored not in certainty, but in being. This anchoring is the quiet miracle of individuation. Many imagine that the path culminates in great visions, in ecstatic experiences, in enlightenment that lifts them above human struggle. But the self does not lift you out of life. It roots you deeper into it. It makes you capable of carrying your own existence with dignity. It makes you capable of facing suffering without collapse, of loving without losing yourself, of standing alone without loneliness, of speaking truth without violence. The self is not an escape, it is a foundation. And once this foundation forms, even lightly, the world no longer appears as chaos, but as a living mandala, a pattern that expresses the secret architecture of your psyche. You begin to see that everything, even your darkest nights, contributed to the creation of this inner symmetry. The losses, the ruptures, the descents, the unbearable letting go, these were not obstacles but necessary movements in the shaping of your center. Every mandala begins with dissolution. The circle must be drawn from emptiness. The old order must collapse to reveal the template of the new. This is why you were forced to release what you held most tightly. The unconscious was clearing the field so that the self could inscribe its geometry upon your life. You may now understand that the great separation was never about the division of people, but about the separation within the soul, the severing of the false from the true, the inherited identity from the essential one, the ego-driven life from the self-led existence. Those who cling to the dying inner structures will remain bound to repetition, to fear, to fragmentation. Those who surrender will step into the mandala of their own becoming. This is the beginning of the new aeon, not in the external world, but within the psyche of each awakened individual. What changes outwardly will merely reflect what has already been transfigured inwardly. Civilization is always downstream from consciousness. To shift the world, the self must first shift within the individual. You are not here to witness the collapse. You are here to embody the reordering. In this final threshold, you may feel an unfamiliar calm, not because your life is suddenly free of challenge, but because you no longer interpret challenge as an attack. You begin to see all experiences as expressions of your inner patterning. You no longer fear the unconscious, for you have walked through its darkness and discovered that it is not an abyss but a womb. You no longer fear loss, for you understand that nothing essential can ever be taken from you. You no longer fear solitude, for you have found the companion within. This is the quiet power of the self. Your task now is not to grasp it, but to allow it, not to force its expression, but to align with it, not to cling to its presence, but to move with its rhythm. The self does not demand worship, it demands participation. It invites you to live from a deeper center, to act not from anxiety, but from clarity, not from compulsion, but from authenticity. It invites you to become a conscious participant in the unfolding of your own myth. Each individual who awakens to this inner center becomes a point of stability in the collective. In times of collapse, such individuals are essential. They hold the psychic ground that others have lost. They carry an inner equilibrium that radiates outward, subtly shaping the emotional field of those around them. The world does not need more noise or more certainty. It needs more people who have touched the self and returned with silence in their bones. And now, as the turning of the aeon completes its arc, you must recognize that everything you have endured, every burning, every unraveling, every night of despair was part of a ritual older than memory. The unconscious chose you, pressed upon you, dismantled you, because you were capable of carrying this transformation. Do not underestimate the significance of your suffering. It was the initiation required for the emergence of your center. You may wonder what comes next, what the self will ask of you, how you are meant to live after standing so close to the threshold between dissolution and rebirth. But the self does not reveal the entire path. It reveals only what must be lived in the present moment. Its guidance is subtle, a whisper rather than a command, a feeling rather than a map. Trust this. Trust that you will know each next step not through fear but through resonance. Let your life now become the mandala. Let your choices reflect the symmetry forming within you. Let your relationships align with your authenticity. Let your voice speak with the weight of your inner knowing. Let your solitude become your temple. Let your presence become your offering to the world. And remember this truth: the unconscious pushed you to let go because the self was ready to emerge. The hell you walked through was the fire of your own becoming. The darkness you endured was the night in which your true center was conceived. The silence you feared was the chamber where the self waited for you. You did not break, you were broken open. You did not lose yourself, you shed what was never yours. You did not fall into emptiness, you returned to the ground of your own being. Now, stand at the center of what remains. Stand in the stillness you once resisted. Stand in the newness that feels both fragile and eternal. The self has begun its quiet ascent through you, and the life that unfolds from this moment forward will not be the life of the old ego. It will be the life shaped by the inner sun, the life lived from the mandala of your soul. Walk gently now. Walk slowly. Walk as one who has crossed the threshold between epochs. The world will not yet understand what you carry, but the unconscious knows, the self knows, and somewhere within you, deeper than thought, older than fear, you know, the turning is complete.